Hi everyone, thank you for coming to this YouTube channel. I hope that you will take some time to visit the website dismantlecapitalismglobally.com. That is dismantlecapitalismglobally.com. My name is Anusha and I started this initiative to bring greater awareness to the system of capitalism in our lives and in the global world. We are all interconnected because of capitalism. It is not just in the US, it is in Europe, it is in Africa, it is in Asia, and the Caribbean and South America. The system is everywhere, and you will face this system everywhere you go. And you'll constantly find yourself thinking of how it became that storyline. Why is this system all over the world? How did it get to be that way? The moment you start asking that question, ta-da, you are on your way to objective analysis, which is what I thrive on, which is where I spend a lot of my time, because I too find myself continuously questioning the issues and how they came to be. And, being a history lover and all definitely makes me even more aware of these issues and their patterns and their entire background. So I hope you get to that stage in life. I hope you are not one of those people who are just walking around entrenched only in your beliefs and only in your opinions, and you don't see the greater world in front of you. You don't see how systems are affecting people's lives in the most de- debilitating way. Now, when you put people, human beings, to social systems, you see conflict, you see clashes, and you have to get to that point where you're asking yourself, why is it that every time I turn the news on or I'm reading the news like I do, I read the news, I don't watch the news. There's always violence. There's always some conflict between people. It has to do with money. It has to do with politics, religions. At this point in history, we are so blessed to have so much information. Thank God for researchers who have always given the world substantial information. And it always disheartens me that people still rely on their opinions and their beliefs to take on these issues. Like, that is not how you look at information. You don't get to leisurely just say, well, I don't think it happened that way, or I don't think that's what it is. That it is not how you answer to these complex issues. That is just not how you do it. But a lot of people do it, and mainstream media definitely allows them to. I mean, considering how mainstream media thrives on that, and mainstream media does not engage in constructive analysis of the issues. They just put an individual in your face, and they put that individual's story in your face. And you know in my mind, it's like, okay, this individual is linked to a community, to a family, a village. So what's happening in that village? Why is this individual all of a sudden committing crimes? Why is this individual having these rough, religious or cultural beliefs? Like, something is influencing our behavior and our projection, and it has to do with our environment. So mainstream media has to change the narrative, change the script, because that's what they're doing. They're reading off scripts, right? And you have to change that to include analysis so that the biases that we have, the stereotypes we have in our minds can be erased. The only way you remove those is if you focus on not just this individual and their story, but the individuals that this individual is attached to. I get mad at mainstream media all the time. I mean, I try to read the stories occasionally and it just upsets me. For someone who values information, I can tell you that they are doing a disservice to us, a grave disservice, how scripted that information is. Anyway, I want to continue my conversation about capitalism, its relationship to socialism and communism. The world has seen all three. But as I've said before, socialism and communism are alternatives. They came to be because The people who had the call to action mentality wanted to question the system of capitalism. So we have socialism and communism. The only problem with socialism and communism is that each time in history there were efforts to fully implement them. You saw the venture capitalists destroying the ideas, destroying the people who wanted to implement socialist and communist ideas. And you still have people thinking, well, those are bad ideas. Socialism and communism are just bad. It just sounds bad. But the reality is that the venture capitalists made you to think that way. The venture capitalists destroyed the ideas of socialism and communism, and of course, those countries are struggling to still implement those or still work with those ideas. But it is the venture capitalist's fault, is what I'm trying to say. Venezuela and Cuba, their downfall in the past few years, with everything that's been happening with them, have been due to the U.S. infiltrating their countries with the effort to dismantle their ideas. So again, you have to look at relationships. You cannot just look at things tunnel visionally or single-handedly, like a lot of people in the U.S. thinks. Like everything is relations. It's systems and it's people. We're interacting. So there's no reason why you should be looking at anything with just in a straight line. So, I was listening to Dr. Amos Wilson, who was an American psychologist, and he spoke fervently about capitalism, the lives of black people, how Europeans interacted with black people. So I highly recommend you listen to some of his speeches right here on YouTube. Dr. Amos Wilson, very prominent educator and psychologist. He's passed away, but he was explaining how socialism started in Europe. And he was saying that that idea came to be because, as France and Great Britain were aiming for capitalism and continuing on in the journey of venture capitalism, of course you had a few people who were what a lot of people would consider vagabonds. They didn't have resources, they did not have the means, so they wandered around the streets. They were homeless, in extreme poverty, but they were troublesome. Of course, they were constantly causing problems, and eventually, it was happening so frequently, so often that countries like France and Great Britain started to bring in ideas, socialist ideas, like welfare system, for example, to stop those people who were considered vagabonds, to quell it, to mitigate the trouble that they were causing. And this is the same scenario as in this present day, where you have a lot of carjackings, you have theft, you have economic crimes. And the reason why those crimes are happening is because you have a venture capitalism idea that is just continuing on. It is leaving a lot of people behind. And what are those people who are being left behind going to do? They usually turn to crime, to petty crimes, right? And that's what the statistics shows, is that poor people tend to commit crimes, but it's not to say that rich people don't commit crimes as well. They do, but it just happens a lot in the poor brackets. And the reason why it happens a lot in the poor bracket is that a lot more people are poor than people are rich. So it's that scenario of the venture capitalist reacts when there is trouble in the environment, when he and she cannot, their profit schemes is having a meltdown, and they have no choice but to tune in and to change something about how they operate. So that's how socialism has operated, is that the venture capitalists only reacted when someone was raising their voices, when someone was, causing trouble, and they were forced to do something. So that's how socialism has always been defined in society. In the bracket or the category of communism, I want to talk about Europe, and mostly Eastern Europe, where communism was hard and communism was harsh and it was violent. And, that's why you'll find that a lot of Europeans are very much into capitalism. They don't want anything to do with communism because, of course, the experiences on the communist countries, it was not a good experience. It was a violent one. It was one where a lot of people died. It was just chaos. It was just not. It was not implemented in the seamless way that it probably was thought about. When you're thinking about something, it looks good. It looks thorough. But then, of course, when you have to implement it, a different story emerges where you've got different dynamics, you've got different people. And of course, things can go bad very quickly. Well, in communist Europe, well, that's what we know. It's been a violent implementation, and predominantly in Eastern European countries. And that's why, like I said, a lot of Europeans are now more into venture capitalism, and they like capitalism more because in their minds it offers freedom. But when you think of the African countries and the lives of black people under the system of capitalism, well, a different story comes to be, a different analysis has to be thought about, because our lives under capitalism is also a really bad one. It's also, it's horrible when you think of slavery, colonialism, redlining, racism. We have not had a good relationship with capitalism. Even today, it is still happening. So our perspective is going to be different from the Western European person's perspective, because they have benefited from capitalism. And now you've got the European and the West European coming together, as in the war with Ukraine, and you see a NATO bringing those countries all together. Well, black and brown people will suffer as a result of this, because the continuation of capitalism will continue, and it will continue regardless of what is going on in our lives, our struggles to find work, to be part of their system that came from Europe. Venture capitalism, as I've said, came from Europe. We know this because of slavery, of the writings of Karl Marx. We know this of the social contracts of the different European philosophers. We see the context of this. When you think of the African countries, their history was a bit different. There were economic divides, but it is not as easy to analyze, because there are many different layers. In addition to the European venture capitalists, you also had the Arab slave trade, and that too changed the infrastructure of Africa. They too had an appetite for getting access to resources, and they too engaged sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, and with the intent to dominate, and with the intent to get resources, and to install the religion Islam. So, analyzing Africa is a whole new history book in itself, and that may come further down when I'm, wanting to look at just that continent and its history. But if you want to take the lead, I've talked about the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Dr. Walter Rodney, and I highly recommend that you read that book. It is a great case study. I have written on it on the website, so if you want to just take a look, that is a good start. But with, like I said, with Europe's immersion into the global world, brought on European ideas into the lives of black and brown people, meaning venture capitalism came into the lives of black and brown people by force, not voluntarily. And even today, what we're seeing is that continuation of that forced labor, or that forced idea into the lives of people. So again, many layers to think about. I hope that I am opening up your mind to see those layers, because it's so important for you to see that. Once you start seeing those different levels of information and interaction, then you begin the journey of not just looking at people and blaming them for their economic woes, but you start to look at people in a different light. You start to see their lives against systems, how those systems are not reaching us in the way that is productive, that is bringing us prosperity. So that is my whole journey, my whole agenda is just to open up your mind, because I know that in Western civilization, the way we're educated is one where everything is just narrow-minded, and you feel like it's a story that's been scripted, and there's little room for critical analysis. In Western civilization, we tend to just care about our territory, and we look at others as though they deserve to be bombed, and they deserve to be in poverty. And that is the image, that is the message that a lot of us are getting even today in mainstream media, in our education system. So I want to remove that. If that is in your mind, I hope that I can remove that, because no human being on this earth deserves to be in poverty or deserves to be bombed repeatedly by military efforts. We have to exit the mentality that some people deserve to live and some people deserve to die, and put our minds in an equilibrium where we see every human life deserves a chance, every human life deserves peace, and every human life deserves freedom, and every human life deserves empathy and love. Specifically in times when violence is in their environments, or that economic instability is in their environment. Take a look at dismantlecapitalismglobally.com. Changingali also.com is another website that I manage. I hope to have you again. I hope that you'll continue to be strong. A lot is going on now, lots of uncertainties, but I hope that you will see my angle, think about it. Thank you.